All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pacheco. And today with me, I have our guest, Jay Rooke. Jay is the founder of GonzoParenting.com, a community for parents to find comedy, camaraderie, and catharsis. I like those popping those C's. Comedy, camaraderie, and catharsis around the insanity of modern parenting. He's the father of a 6-year-old boy-girl twins and the host of the Gonzo Parenting podcast. Jay, welcome to the Remarkable Coach.
Michael, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Not as excited as I am, because as you know, you and I have spoken about this a bit. I've got my firstborn coming up here, due in about 30 days.
Yeah, nice, down to the wire.
So we're getting ready. Gonzo Parenting. Tell me a little bit about that, about why you started doing this, and kind of what your mission is here.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share that. So what I noticed was I'm an only child raised by a single mom. So I had very limited, you as well. There you go. So you're going to particularly enjoy this journey because what turns out that other normal people that have siblings have exposure around kids. So, so I think I had spent 10 hours total around children my entire life prior to having my own. So it particularly blew my mind at just how much there was and how much energy and intensity. And I quickly found myself, just my back against the wall constantly, but noticing that I was really stressed out and not enjoying a lot of those, initial years, and felt bad or sort of guilty around it, and was looking at other, sort of perfect parents and being like, why am I not happy and cheery? And oh my God, look, I just made matching cupcakes to go with the kids' hats that I knit, type of thing. And what I started to learn was that there was a lot of other parents out there in similar straits that weren't exactly enjoying the parenting journey, but were loving their children, and kind of found themselves in this insanity between the two. So we ended up launching this community. We got about 1,400 members in the first 3 weeks, which was awesome. And it's just lots of banter, come as you are. And my goal is to have a sort of sacred and safe space for parents to show up with exactly where they're at with their parenting at that point in time. Let's get a lot of laughs out of this and laugh with and at each other, to lighten up some of the heaviness of all of this. And then last up is how do we provide some of the personal development resources for parents that help them navigate this journey a little bit more smoothly.
Nice. And how do you do that? So it kind of it sounds like maybe the center around all of this is this community that you guys have, but you also provide advice, coaching, maybe courses. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we're going multi-format here. So we're going to kick off with the podcast first. And so the format of the podcast is the first segment is roundtable discussion with actual Gonzo parents from our community, where we pick a topic and talk about, how that impacts us as parents. What are some of the funnier or crazier aspects we've had, and where have we gotten challenged with some of these things? And then second segment is bringing on someone who has expertise in that field, either a therapist or an author or someone like that. And we talk about tips and techniques for how to better understand what's going on, and then start to do some of the personal work that we want to do to show up as the parents we want to become.
Nice.
And then to your point, yeah. So next up is once we get the podcast up and rolling, I think in about middle of spring this year is the intention to launch a first sort of group experiential thing for parents, and having some type of loose curriculum and coaching around what that process looks like, so that those of us that are in the thick of it and feeling overwhelmed can come in, be seen, heard, validated, but also get some traction on making the journey less stressful, so that they're able to show up as a happier parent.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about, you said experiential stuff coming up, but before we go there, tell us how do you define what is a Gonzo parent?
Yeah, so it came to me somewhat inspired by Hunter S. Thompson's Gonzo journalism, where he talks about, there's objective journalism, and then there's the Gonzo journalism is when the journalist starts to basically embed his experience of the event in his or her writing about it. Mm-hmm. And so when I got the inspiration to launch Gonzo Parenting, I was making a lot of humorous posts about the craziness and the insanity of my twins, and how I was basically being held captive and things that they would do to me that would drive me nuts. And the more I did that, the more I got more encouragement from the community, and more folks, were loving what was going on. And so for me, that sort of fear and loathing experience coupled with his way of approaching this is what really inspired that for me.
So you've got Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. I'm going to blink twice so the kids can't hear me. Yep, I don't want to get in trouble.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. So that tracks. Now talk a little bit about you got some experiential stuff coming up. What is that gonna look like?
So basically what we're trying to do is map out the flow of the year through parents' eyes versus the regular calendar. So, here's when the school breaks are, here's when summer vacation is, and those types of things. But basically wanting to take a look at, hey, what are some of the foundational pain points of those, call it first 5-6 years of parenting that we all get thrown up against. And, as an example, one would be losing control of everything. And so I think most of us that are professionals had a pretty buttoned down lifestyle as far as how we managed our time and how we went about life. And then kids come into the mix and you realize, wait, I cannot control anything. And I need to really change my mindset around that. Otherwise I'm going to be impatient and overwhelmed all the time. So how do we find those main pain point things around parenting and then create containers and forums where we discuss these things, have some application, likely some Abraham Hicks style hot seats and group experiential things, as well as, curriculum's too strong a word here, but probably more like a sat song or fireside chat around some of these topics where we'll go deeper on them and explore what's really going on.
Okay. And are you thinking like Zoom kind of gatherings, or are you thinking about in-person stuff as well, retreats or something like that?
Yeah. So everything's still going crazy right now where we live. So Zoom for now with the intention of, getting it to be in person. And I'd love to do a Gonzo Parenting retreat here in wine country and get folks to fly out for a 3-day weekend and have some fun.
Nice. Right on. With most of the parents in your group, are we looking, what age group for the kids are most of your community members?
Well, it's really funny. There's this amusing Schadenfreude aspect of parenting where once you're out of the crap of a bad era, being able to look back and see other parents in it and be like, I'm not dealing with that anymore. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about like some of these parenting milestones as far as one is certainly once you stop checking on your child to make sure if they're alive through the night or not type of thing. And then another one is when you're basically not having to keep them alive at all minutes of the day anymore. Or like my favorite one that we're just experiencing is on a Saturday morning, the kids can get up and get themselves their own breakfast and we can sleep in for an hour or two type of thing. But yeah, so to answer your question, the range is spread. I'd say most of the parents that are more actively commenting are in the 0 to call it 8-9 years range. And then there's a lot of like, there's cool community support where there's a fair amount of grandparents or parents of adult teens, adult children in the group that still hang out and laugh along the way or provide guidance from what their experiences were to help some of the younger parents along.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. What about things like, I don't know, what are some other common traits of parents in your group? Like, I don't know, like homeschooling, for example. Do a lot of parents homeschool, or is that?
I think a real common theme right now is all the parents being challenged with homeschooling with Zoom. And the challenges of all of that. And hey, is school open this week or is it not? And hey, are we going to be able to work this week or not? And how polar those things are. And then the guilt around, well, hey, how much screen time is my kid getting per day? But yet I still have to get work done and live and function and things like that. So I'd say those would be some of the more recent common themes. And then just a general non-filter around what's going on in the parenting journey, whether that's getting, there's usually a lot of bodily fluid jokes in it, especially with the initial years of parenting. And my kid just did X, Y, Z to me or whatever it might be. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Totally. And I think there's, I don't know, this weird, I can't put my finger on it, but sort of agreement in the community almost where folks would tend to post things that they wouldn't normally post on their own personal pages, and so people tend to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more sharing. And I think that's what provides some of that cathartic components of the community.
And as a community leader, how do you manage those kind of community dynamics where people feel, I don't want to call it a safe space necessarily, but where people feel open and connected to each other in that way?
Yeah, it's been something that's occurred nicely and organically so far that I haven't had to put a lot of redirection into, and I think part of that comes from just sort of setting the tone of the group well out of the gate, where it kind of then became self-fulfilling prophecy as far as, hey, lead by example, and then people would post those types of things in the group as well. And what I've kind of decided is, I don't want to overly moderate anything, and I'm just going to let the group figure things out, to the degree that it's not something that's particularly off color or vulgar or, not disrespectful or something like that. And obviously clamp down on that, but otherwise just kind of letting the river fill the riverbeds naturally, if you will.
So it's kind of, you're setting the tone, the overall tone, setting some basic ground rules, and then letting the community members themselves kind of guide, where the group goes, because at this point, right, they are the community. So they do define it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep. Exactly.
Right on. Selfishly, I'm curious to know from you, Jay. So you grew up like me without a father, right? Single mom, only child. How has fatherhood been like? What has fatherhood been like for you?
Fascinating, because there's, as you can experience, there's no real comparison for, it's like trying to tell somebody what steak is like that they've never had before. Not having that tight interwoven relationship with a father growing up. And anyone who's had that, parental or childhood experience, there's no experiential memory block to kind of plug that into. So it's all new every single day. And what hugely strikes me is, I think all parents kind of revisit their inner child more once they have children, because you basically see yourself growing up in many ways through your kid's own eyes. And so I was particularly struck by how tender and important that relationship is for my son and daughter, but particularly I know more with my son, and just that male identity bonding figure type of thing. And then I guess part and parcel with that is, we've all inherited whatever parenting stuff we've gotten from those that came before us, some of it good, some of it bad, and realizing I also get to choose how to deliberately create what type of a father I want to be and how I want all of this to roll. And so really noting, hey, I don't need to do whatever those things are that other generations or other families might like to cling to that don't work for me. And I get to choose, that container with my wife and sort of co-create that.
How do you maintain, maybe this is a little bit of a abstract question, but how do you maintain the self-awareness to catch yourself, hold yourself accountable when you screw shit up?
Totally. Yep. And then that's going to be a big part of the Gonzo, experiential offering. What we're going to all be working on is getting that heightened level of mindfulness and self-awareness. And one of the best lines that I heard from somebody is they said, bad parents, no, it was good parents don't wonder if they're being bad. No, bad parents don't wonder if they're being bad parents. The gist of it was, and like, hey, if you're being introspective enough to note where you're missing, you're doing the work. And that's kind of all that can be asked of you. And I think we all get handed our parents' blueprints, and that's, something that we all work out. And so I think two things I'd say to that is, one is, this has been said a million times over, but it just bears repeating, that the modeling of how we live our lives and interact is way more impactful to our kids than whatever we might be saying. And so I notice when I'm out of integrity on that stuff, that kind of gets me more back into it and trying to focus on that. And then I would say that self-awareness component is just huge. And so there's times where, maybe I get overwhelmed or impatient, and I realize, oh man, I'm actually hurting my kid in live time right now. Like I know this isn't the way to be being about this. And going back to the modeling, I think it's then sitting down and saying, hey, okay, let's sit down and talk about what just happened. And what, happened for me was, I got overwhelmed because you kids kept yelling and screaming and were throwing things, and I didn't want someone to get hurt. And that's why I raised my voice. But hey, what's a way that daddy could have handled that differently? And, we'll talk about taking a couple of breaths or doing a quick walk or whatever these things are, and then apologizing. And so,
and you'll talk with your 6-year-olds just straight up, transparently about that kind of thing. Like, I screwed up. Like, what could I have done differently? That kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. 100%. And trying to create that emotional transparency. One of the things that we're going to play with in the group is this term, trans parenting, and essentially transparent parenting and sharing what's live time going on for us and where are we making mistakes, so that we're able to kind of get in the kitchen and fix these things and start to shape them so that, it turns out they're not a lifelong issue that gets handed down to our kids. And then, how do we create that and foster that emotional literacy with our kids? So, as an example, my daughter blew up over morning routine today and got super, tantrumy and whatnot. And then once stopped crying, said, "Dad, I'm sorry about that. I got, too upset." And so, we start to model that stuff, and hey, we all are going to have lesser emotional moments. And one of the things that I'm thinking probably most proud of is my son will occasionally meditate, which I think is just so cool for, a 6-year-old.
That's huge for a 6-year-old. Like, just on his own.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to take a moment. Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Cool. What are some common struggles for parents in your group, and how do you coach them through that?
Yeah. So I there's a big aspect, I think, to making peace of the insanity of things and fully going to surrender. And that whole experience, I think, is particularly difficult for all of us. And I think parenting in those early years becomes that crucible moment where, it's either let go or get dragged below type of thing, and needing to rewire how we react with a lot of our reality around us. And I think one of the biggest lies, with that, I think one of the things we really want to embrace in the community is debunking some of those parenting falsities or lies. And one would be something around, and I totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I got it. It's that we think we're going to make like some slight adjustments to our lives and keep the prior way we had things going, but just with a tweak here or there, kind of like getting a dog. And now we're up in the mornings to take it out type of thing, but that's about it. Whereas I feel like in my experience, parenting caused me to have to blow up everything that we had for our foundational way of how we lived and ran our lives as a couple, and re-engineer and revisit everything, because anything that I tried to pull in from the former, it just didn't hold anymore and didn't work.
Okay.
Other struggles, I think there's a lot of people are talking about the fatigue on couples of being, cooped up for so long and going through all of these super challenging experiences. And then I think one of the, kind of common themes of the group is just recognizing the craziness of how nutty parenting is, and just absolute circus moments every single day, where it's not like just a tweak crazy, like, a glass of milk got knocked over. It's like, no, they're throwing poo and hand painting on the walls with their diapers while someone's trying to put the cat in the washing machine type of thing, and I'm supposed to run a conference call.
And a glass of milk got knocked over. Yeah,
exactly. Totally.
Yeah, I think, I gotta say, man, really. So I'm a marketer. It's what I do for a living, and looking at your marketing and your branding, even the name Gonzo Parenting, it really, I think I get the impression from your brand, from your website, that Gonzo Parenting is about embracing the suck and not just embracing it, but accepting it as part of the journey, right? As part of the adventure, and trying to, maybe flipping the script a little bit and figuring out how to have fun with it.
100%. Yeah. Because the fun part, even though it sucks. Exactly. And for me, like that's how it started for me. What was, I would post my own frustrations of what was going on in my parenting journey, but it would be cathartic for me to then retell the tale and put a funny spin on it, as if I had a little bit of distance from it now. Yeah. And see that for the craziness that it was versus the overwhelm that was going on during it. And so sharing that, and then again, modeling like, hey, this is what we can do in this group. And so when you need to blow off some steam, like fire away, and it's an okay place to do it.
Reframing it as stranger than fiction.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think like one of the common parenting themes that comes across everywhere that we really want to celebrate in the group is that happy moms and dads have the best chance of raising happy and healthy kids. And so when we start to go into martyr mode or overwhelm ourselves as parents, or don't take time for self-care and things of that nature, we talked a lot about how like an unhappy mom or dad brings the entire house down, and then every chore that you're doing is so much harder because you're in a bad mood, and et cetera. And how much it's worth it when you can catch yourself in that awareness moment, say, you know what, this is what I really need right now to keep my mental and emotional mojo where it needs to be. And I'm going to be okay with, or negotiate with my partner that, hey, tonight we're not going to do these dishes or chore XYZ because this is what is more important right now. And I think as one who, myself, speaking personally for myself, was pretty linear and like control oriented in how I managed my life historically, needing to revisit some of that stuff and be more in flow, and recognizing that family peace and keeping that energy good is more meaningful than going sergeant level down and being like, hey, this needs to get done now and today, and this needs to get done here. And then, maybe we're checking the boxes and getting those traditional, seemingly important things done, but at the cost of the gold.
Yeah. I like that. Very nice. Yeah, that's great. What, I don't know, what is one gift? So I'm just asking all of these like super selfish questions. Please. I apologize. I don't apologize.
you as a coach, this is hilarious how this always happens, how your clients will all of a sudden start to experience things in like waves and groups where it's the same issues coming up in the same week type of thing. Yeah. And then I swear for on my other podcast that I ran for about 3 years, every time I had a guest on, it ended up being a subject matter expert that like I actually needed in my business at that moment. And I'd be like, oh, this is perfect. Let's talk about, copywriting or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Hopefully this helps. I'm sure there are parents listening to this podcast for sure.
Definitely. And that's actually a big thing that we're going to work on, I think, in the group, is going back to that hot seat, and how are we going to teach and experientialize some of this. One of the things that I want to do is kind of play the client almost, but being a muse for how we can personally go through these internal conversations and make these things work, versus kind of being tutorial and teaching top down.
Yeah. Nice. So the question is, what is one gift that every new parent should gift themselves?
So, something around, whatever keeps their mojo going. For a lot of us, that's like, our old college friends or roommates. But, those people that we can just pick up with wherever we left off, and there's not a lot of, obligation or whatever it might be. But I feel like having some friends and booking in those calls during the first year is super important, because it's so funny how the genders react to child rearing differently. But like if you're a guy and most of your friends are single, guess what? You don't got friends anymore. Because basically totally. You guys want to come over and hang out with the baby? Hell no, Jay. We're going to be at the bar. We'll text you something good. Let you know what happens. Yeah. But it's a pretty common experience, I think, for if you're not already in parent circles. It's really tough to keep friendships going and being deliberate about that and getting your cup filled. And that first year is just utterly brutal for just about everybody, and just the sleep deprivation and the deprivation in just every single direction. And so having whatever it is for you that's a cup filler, and doing it in advance, and ideally, with your partner, and honey, this is my thing that I'm going to need to do at some point in time, and here's yours, and let's hold each other accountable to make sure we do these things, because just keeping that motivation and optimism going, I think, is a challenge that first year.
Okay. So I want to take that a step further. So for myself, as an only child, I grew up, I had my own room. I just spent a lot of time alone. So what I think I'm going to get for myself is a pair of nice Bose noise canceling headphones.
Yes.
So I can get peace and quiet whenever I want it, when I need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've asked my wife what she thinks that she wants, and she doesn't know. She grew up with a sister, with both parents in the family, and she has no idea. And I want to help her, find peace in the crazy moments. And I want to help make sure that this experience is sustainable and wonderful for her.
Right.
Any advice there?
Yeah, I love the Bose headphones one. One of the things that I noticed about myself, super ADHD and so very auditory sensitive, and so having two super loud kids when I'm all about like tranquil and zen has been a challenge. And so what I noticed for me, Apple AirPods are noise canceling as well, and so sometimes I'll wear those around the house just to take that like top 10% of the edge of the volume off, and it kind of keeps me from going too crazy. And then the other thing that, going back to an earlier conversation, I think what's really important for all new parents is to be curious and start to journal or keep track of what type of parents keeps them in their best zone. So as an example, I learned that I need a lot more alone time than I thought I did. And, as an empath and kind of being around two intense kids all the time when they're home, for me, I just get kind of energy overwhelmed and then go into, overwhelm mode. And then that's not good for anybody either. And so I noticed for me, I need much more alone time than I was recognizing. And, doing that makes me a much better father. And so let's pretend, someone's in that instance, being able to say to their spouse, like, hey, this is, what I need to do to stay sane. What can I do, kind of back and each of you keep washing each other's hands that way. And so figuring those things out. And then the other thing I would say, going back to what is it for your wife? Two thoughts would be: one, just having her do some journaling or, quick brainstorming around what are the things that light her up, that historically have really gotten her in her groove, whatever that might be. Like for my wife, that's going on hikes alone in the woods type of thing. But figuring out what those things are, maybe just keeping a grab bag list so that when those blow up days or weekends do occur, you've got something to reach for versus trying to look at a blank sheet of paper. And then the other thought being, it could be one of these you don't know what you don't know type of things. And so maybe as an example, you've got the third Saturday, after the third month blocked off for her day type of thing. And when that time comes around, she might know exactly what she needs in that moment, and like, hey, this is what I need today based on where I'm at.
You think it's super important to like book out time in the calendar flat out?
We did, just because we're both working and we both have our own businesses, and so there's just so many moving parts. And what you'll find is that children are all consuming all of the time, and so unless you carve these things out, you'll notice weeks and months will go by where you're like, oh, I haven't done anything for myself.
I've heard, Jay, I've heard that things get a lot easier with kids.
Yeah. Where have you been hanging out?
That's not true?
No. So shockingly, it's not. That's another thing I'd throw out would be most couples were good at being couples, perhaps prior to having kids, but they don't yet know, or do they work well together? Are they good work partners? And that was one big thing that I noticed, was it was easy for me to relate with my wife when it was just a romantic and couple relationship. But then once kids come in, it's much more of a work partner type dynamic a lot of the time, because there's just so much to do. And when partners aren't aligned on how to work well with each other, that can get clunky. And I mean like that pure working together dynamic type of thing, versus being like, hey, we're going to go on a date this weekend. What restaurant do you want to go to? And, where do we want to do an overnight? Whatever that might be. And so, and again, this is my personal constitution. I need a little bit more structure. I don't do well in full free fall environments. So like, as an example, I noticed I needed much more proactive weekly planning meetings with my wife and talking about who's on kid duty in the mornings and when's this happening. I feel like anything you can start to systematize, the better, and getting those types of flows in place, and then delegating. as much as humanly possible. And
turning it into a business.
Essentially, for me, that's what I needed. And then when I was doing that, then that allowed me to show up and be a more present, playful dad in the parenting moments. Otherwise, I was half present and my mind was, running around like, wait, do we have food ready for the rest of this week? And, have we ordered new shoes yet? Because they're growing so fast through these shoes every other week. And then, Monday morning comes around, the kid's like, oh, these shoes hurt. I can't wear these to school. And you're like, son of a bitch, I forgot again. And so I feel like the more you can get kind of 1 month ahead of things, the easier, or, however many months is feasible for you. But a lot of the stuff that's going to be coming down the pike, will be coming down the pike. And so the more you can make it easier on yourself, the more I found it gave me peace back in my present moments, because I wasn't constantly worrying about stuff down the road.
Right on. Right on. Circling back to, more of the coaching stuff specifically that you do, what does a typical engagement look like with Gonzo Parenting? Is that, are people, in part of the group, is there like a monthly retainer? Do you work with people for like 6 months at a time, or what does typical engagement look like?
Yeah. So there'll be some type of group paid membership dynamic coming down the road. We haven't exactly figured out what that mix looks like. We're kind of playing with the ingredients, if you will, and being like, oh, this would be a cool component, and this would be, maybe that one's overkill, et cetera. But that's definitely a thought. And then on the engagement front.
So are you not, to be clear, are you not monetizing the group, the community right now? At
present, no, it's all free at present. We're just about to launch a comic strip that I'm really excited about. And nice. That's going to be housed on Webtoons. And so if you get certain amount of followers, you become eligible for paid ads, et cetera. And then my hope to monetize the comic strip is to sell the originals as NFTs at some point down the road and play with it that way. Yeah, totally. And then monetizing the podcast through sponsorships and affiliate deals at present. So that's kind of how we've been generating revenue thus far. And then, so that experiential offering will probably be the first full paid offering for the group. Gotcha. And then as far as things are at present, it's just more one-on-one type of work, and somebody saying, hey, this is the kind of stuff I want to be working on. I know this is where I want to go. I'm obviously not getting there on my own. Otherwise I've done it already. And talking about what makes sense and how frequent that is to meet up and check back in and coach our way through it.
Fascinating. So can we talk a little bit about about monetization? So like right now, it sounds like you're only doing it through the podcast. You're generating everything through the podcast. How were you able to sustain this, before up to now without having, monetized stuff like the group, for example?
Yes. So it's been a side hustle. So my regular day job, if you will, is more around business and spiritual personal development coaching type of work.
Hence Abraham Hicks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's more the entrepreneur, how to launch a business, how to make it through the first 12 months or get your business model profitable, et cetera. And what's been nice is because I've had that going on, I've been able to slow roll the growth or the monetization pressure on Gonzo Parenting, which has allowed me to create it in ways that I wouldn't have done. Front
loading with value.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And not having to trip about it and getting to actually put more money into it, which I'm really, I love the graphics that we've created so far and the way the branding looks. So that feels clean. And it's been trying to figure out what is that proper monetization model for this. And as you know, there's so much free content out there. And so is it some portion of a patron, $5 to $10 a month, throw me a bone type contributions? Is it more that group model of coaching? Or is it more access, et cetera? So I think what you'll see a lot of this year are a little, some micro bets and beta offerings and seeing what the community most wants and responds best to.
Right on. And you're just so moving forward, sticking with the coaching business part of this, you're going to be just trying different offers and seeing what works and just kind of adjusting course to fit, what people are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. What I think is most likely to happen is some type of constantly open enrollment or maybe monthly enrollment community, where we're working on a handful of topics each month. They're mapped out on an annual basis, basically mirroring what parents go through during the years. And like I said, we're drawing on some of those most fundamental pain points of parenting. So there's always going to be some mindfulness components going on with these things. And then how do we learn about things like intergenerational trauma or codependency with our spouses and things of that nature that we can start to weave into the group and get people increasing their parenting emotional literacy around some of that stuff.
Nice. And in terms of, maintaining separation between the free Facebook group and a closed group, at this point, is the Facebook group basically managing and running itself, or are you still a driver in there?
Yeah, I'd say encourager would be, more where I'm at right now. So I'll occasionally pop in when I'm inspired to share something that's off the cuff and happen in that moment, or to make some comments about things, et cetera. Otherwise, the team that we work with, what we're trying to do more so is getting, researching the right types of memes in advance, or the proper, engagement prompts from the community, and talking about how we're going to keep engagement going with the group and provide those things.
Okay. And you'll be talking, will you be talking about deep dives in the open group? So for example, if the closed group, you're going deep into X, Y, or Z, are you going to preview some of that on the open group and encourage people to move over in that way, or?
Great question. Yeah, 100%. So what I want to move towards right now is getting to a spot of a lot of content creation by me. And whether some of that's videos or interviews, or whether it's like these Abraham Hicks style hot seats, it'll probably be some mix of all of that, and then taking snippets of those, like you said, to the group. Hopefully, enough where they're getting some value out of whatever the snippet is, with the encouragement to join the group and consume more. And then also wanting to chop those types of things up for like TikTok videos and the more shorter format video things, and get engagement that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. What about books? What books would you recommend for a new parent?
So, and that's actually the other thing that's going on in the background that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. I'm about 3/4 through writing a book. Nice. Actually titled, thus far the working title is Sons Becoming Fathers, and nice. Mapping out that, that journey that you will soon be going through as well, and talking about all things parenting and that personal growth, hero's journey type experience. For me, the book that I found the most helpful was Michael A. Singer's The Surrender Experiment.
Okay.
No, sorry. The Untethered Soul. The Untethered Soul.
Untethered Soul. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason why I say this is, as you said at the start of the call, how do you prepare for this thing that you can't prepare for? And so I didn't find as many of the parenting books as impactful for me as I did the self-improvement, personal development type books that got me more in touch with my own consciousness, awareness around my emotions, staying mindful during the day, things of that nature. Whatever I needed to do to help me stress manage and navigate that stuff the best is what was helping me more so. And somebody made a good comment the other day. They were saying that kids basically come just fine. They don't need to be turned into anything or unbroken or fixed. And that for me was a big lesson, was realizing, hey, I can let my hand off the wheel a lot more of this than I need to, because the kids are going to naturally grow and develop on their own. Like, I'm not their sole salvation or determinants of success in life. And
weirdly resilient.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then, I would also again say something around couple related stuff, and just doing some preventative maintenance on whatever that might be. I don't know of any, or very few at least, parents that have not had their relationships challenged through the child rearing process, and just how do you keep staying on the same page and making things work. And going back to my earlier comment around becoming work partners, that I think that's a big complainer that a lot of parents have, is it feels like they're the romantic and playful, flirty side of their relationship went out the door when the kids came, and now they're just work partners, trading off, chores and things of that nature. And so how do you keep that shored up and making sure communication's open, et cetera? I just bought a deck of like couple prompt conversation cards, type of thing. You're going to have limited amounts of time together. And it's also easy, I think, to get resentful about that lack of time, because you just been just each other the entire time. And so being deliberate around whatever that looks like to the degree you can.
Yeah, I fully intend on scheduling date nights.
Yeah.
At least twice a month, if not once a week.
Yes.
I think that's super important. I read a statistic over a decade ago, I think, that said, something along the lines of couples that stay together, couples that have been together for 5 or 7 years before they have kids are, exponentially more likely to stay together.
Sure.
In the long term. Have you experienced that to be true?
I have, and it doesn't surprise me, similar to like
the foundation.
100%. Yeah. And then the opposite around, like why someone might get separated if they'd only been together for a little bit of time, because the amount of the stressors relative to not having that longer, well to dip into are notable. And it's similar to some of the couples that I've watched get divorced during the pandemic, where you say to yourself, well, some people will be like, well, the signs were there already, or there was something there already. I'm like, maybe. And that's also like a tremendously hard thing for everybody to navigate through. And for many people, it was one of the harder things they've gone through in their lives. And I think those first few years of child rearing, bear a similar emotional curve around. Is just way overwhelming and then just challenging.
Yeah. My wife and I, we started dating about 5 or maybe 6 years ago. And when, March 2020, she took 2 or 3 months off of work, and we had a great time. We had a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic about that.
Right on. And, actually, as you say that, I don't know if you guys have family in the area, but I would say overwhelmingly the hardest part about parenting, it's no particular day or thing. It's the fact that it's just ongoing and never ending.
They never go away. The kids
never go away. But I think like what parents most crave, that I see a lot in the conversation with people in the group, is that just some time off, just a little bit of time to hit the pause button and reset. And so I'd say, as you start to try to figure out, how life goes with a newborn in the house, if you can ever get any time away where somebody can come and spend a night, or a grandparent or something like that, the couples that I know that do that seem to do the best job of keeping like their batteries charged. And there's this old adage that parenting is a full-time job, and if you bring your kids on vacation, it's really just working from home. I'm sorry, working remotely. And so I'm butchering all my joke lines here today, but it's just so true. So like, I remember being super excited to take the kids to Tahoe for a week. And then I realized, oh wait, no, I'm just basically on kid duty from wake up until bed every single night for 6 days now. And so how do you carve out some of that time where, you can get your alone time or couple time? Because that's, I think, is the hardest part, is just the enduring, never endingness of it if you're not getting breaks. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. So as you know, my wife and I, we just moved into this house that we purchased. We just moved in 3 months ago, and it's going to be interesting. We've got about 30 acres outside, and I think my plan is, as soon as they can walk, just throw them outside.
Yeah.
Let the wolves, take and see what happens. I don't know that it's really going to work that way, but
right. My nest came out.
There's plenty of room out there for them to go outside and play. So my hope is that at least once they get old enough to go outside and play, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And then there's so much to learn from nature, and it's such an engaging thing, especially for little hands and all that.
Yeah. Hopefully, and give them an interest in that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, tell me about some of your successes with people that you've worked with, that you've been around, that you've seen, getting together within that Facebook community. What are some big successes, big wins that you've had?
Yeah, as it relates to some of the Gonzo work.
Yeah.
I think
you or your clients, or
for sure,
community members, I suppose.
Yeah,
or one-on-one stuff.
For sure. I'm just trying to think of some of the bigger things. I feel like there was this crystallization moment around one particular day where it was during the pandemic, and I was not feeling it, and I was depressed and just bummed about everything, and was on kid duty, and they wanted to push a furniture dolly down the street to a neighbor's house. I'm just like, no, we're not pushing a furniture dolly down the street. And they're like, come on, Dad, come on. And I'm like, all right, fine, let's just do this. And it's all annoyed and grumpy. And then they have me sitting and they start squealing with laughter, pushing me down the street. And it was one of these aha surrender moments around, again, don't try to control things, just go with the flow, be with what's present in front of you. And that's what ultimately then turned into the logo for Gonzo Parenting, of us being on this furniture dolly going flying down a hill. And I feel like there's just been this, I guess a victory for me has been this general surrender to this as my path. And almost like the unlikely leader of a parenting group. I would have never said that I'd be leading a parenting group 5 years ago. But then I look at this kind of natural progression of the way that we've approached this and what we've gotten into. And, I guess historically describe myself as a somewhat reluctant parent, just because I was not as versed in whatever it was I was supposed to be doing. And now I realize, oh, no, wait, just me sharing my story of what's going on and reporting back authentically and vulnerably about what's happening is the parenting magic, and getting others to then do the same. And so I'm excited about my work in a way I've never been before. I've never had this pure creative component to my work. It's always been a little bit more serious with the business coaching and things like that. But with the comic strip and the podcast and laughing about all of these things, it's been really fun to bring humor, which was historically it's always been a large part of me, but it was compartmentalized more in the business coaching stuff, to now bring that fully woven into the work that we're doing.
That's awesome. Are you doing the cartoon yourself? Is your wife working on that?
No, so I'm putting myself, I guess, more as creative direction on it for it. And then I've got a guy that does the illustrations. I could not draw that good, so he does a great job then taking my concepts into illustrations and putting them together.
That's super fun. That's awesome, man. I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah, when we were saying how cool it is, like I never would have thought I'd be authoring a comic book, but we were saying, hey, at the end of the year, we're going to have enough put together to turn this into a Gonzo Parenting comic book and sell it that way. Yeah.
What your background is business consulting kind of stuff, or?
So it's a long start. I used to be an attorney, hated practicing law, worked in corporate for about a decade, and then had a restaurant for a hot minute, and then maybe the last 9 years or so. What I've typically been doing is working with individuals that are trying to leave their job to launch their first whatever. So they're going from employee to entrepreneur, usually a knowledge-based type of business. And I'm helping them kind of navigate that path, figure out how to put their business together, and do the personal development work that they need to do to kind of grow into that entrepreneurial mindset.
Awesome. Do you have a website? Would you like to pitch that on this podcast right now?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So gonzoparenting.com is it. Yeah, gonzoparenting.com is the parenting one, obviously. And then jayrooke.com is my personal website. And so that's where I've got the coaching offerings and my prior podcast, which was more around entrepreneurship and that whole growth.
Awesome. And for those listening to the podcast, that's Rooke, Rooke, JayRooke.com.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah. Awesome, Jay. This has been a pleasure. We're coming up to the end of the hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you want to chat about that we haven't touched on yet?
Let's see. I think the only thing that I'd throw out that I'm really excited about with the group is that we're watching society change its framework a lot, and especially coming out of COVID here. And I jokingly refer to it as the great awakening as well for so many people. And I think what a lot of us are realizing was that we were living lives that weren't working for us and continuing to do it anyways versus being more conscious and deliberate. And I think one of the things that COVID blew open for a lot of parents was how much the system that we have in society is not well set up to support parents on their journey and doing the work. And that we pay for this in other ways by having kids that aren't as healthy and happy as we want them to be. And so how do we start to restructure things a little bit more and take some of that deliberate creation back around how we want our lives to look and what we want our relationships with our children to be? And so I'm excited to see businesses, starting to become more flexible around those things and encouraging it more. And then we've also seen, with the great resignation, this huge flood of people leaving corporate. And I think you're going to see a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses coming out of this next year when people realize that, hey, I wasn't enjoying what I was doing and I really want to try to do thing XYZ.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. Jay Rooke, it's jayrooke.com and gonzoparenting.com. Thank you so much for joining us on the Remarkable Coach podcast.
Michael, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed chatting with you today, and I hope your listeners enjoyed the episode.
Cheers, brother.
Bye.